Welcome to Trending Update USA. I'm Stefan, and today we're looking at a story that raises a bigger question than just one player's withdrawal. When one of the most disciplined and dominant athletes in modern tennis decides to step away, what does that really tell us about the state of the sport and the pressure behind it? Because this isn't just about Iga Świątek missing a national event. It's about what happens when expectation, responsibility, and personal limits collide in public view. So here's what we know. Iga Świątek recently withdrew from representing her country at a national team event, a decision that quickly drew attention not just because of her status, but because of what followed. The team captain, David Kelt, publicly stated that he had tried to convince her to participate. That single sentence, tried to convince her, has sparked conversation, concern, and even debate across the tennis world. At first glance, it may sound like a normal situation. Athletes withdraw from events all the time. Injuries, scheduling, fatigue, these are all part of professional sport. But this moment feels different. Not because of the withdrawal itself, but because of the tension it reveals between national duty and personal well-being. Let's pause and think about who Iga Świątek is in today's tennis landscape. She's not just a top-ranked player. She's become a symbol of consistency, discipline, and professionalism. Since her rise, she's carried not only her own expectations but also the hopes of a nation. And that's where the weight begins to build. When a player like Świątek steps onto the court, she's not just playing for herself. She's representing fans, sponsors, national pride, and a global audience that watches every move. Over time, that kind of visibility creates a constant psychological load, one that doesn't disappear even when the matches end. And this is where the captain's comment becomes important. David Kelt saying he tried to convince her suggests that this wasn't a simple scheduling conflict. It hints at a deeper conversation, possibly about readiness, energy, or even mental space. We often talk about injuries in sports because they're visible. A bandaged knee, a taped wrist, these are easy to understand. But what about mental fatigue? What about emotional exhaustion? These are harder to see, but just as real. In recent years, tennis has seen a growing number of athletes speak openly about mental health. Players are beginning to push back against the idea that they must always be available, always be ready, always say yes. And while that shift is necessary, it also creates friction, especially in moments like this. Because from a team perspective, especially in national competitions, the expectation is clear: your country needs you. But from an individual perspective, the question becomes, at what cost? For Iga Świątek, this decision may have been about protecting something more important than a single event. It may have been about long-term balance, something that's incredibly difficult to maintain in a sport as demanding as tennis. Let's not forget the calendar these players face. The modern tennis schedule is relentless. Week after week, different cities, different surfaces, different time zones. There's very little room to reset. And when you add media obligations, sponsorship commitments, and constant travel, the pressure multiplies. Now layer on social media. Every decision an athlete makes is instantly analyzed. If they play and lose, they're criticized. If they withdraw, they're questioned. If they speak honestly, their words are dissected. There's no off switch. In Świątek's case, the reaction has been mixed. Some fans understand her need to step back. Others feel disappointed, especially those who see national representation as a duty above all else. And that divide reflects a larger conversation in sports today. Are athletes allowed to prioritize themselves? It sounds like a simple question, but in reality it's complicated. Because athletes don't exist in isolation. Their careers are intertwined with federations, sponsors, fans, and media narratives. Every decision has ripple effects. And this is where the role of leadership becomes critical. When David Kelt says he tried to convince her, it raises another question: how do teams support players while also respecting their boundaries? Convincing someone can mean many things. It can be encouragement. It can be persuasion. But it can also unintentionally add pressure. And in high-performance environments, even small amounts of added pressure can feel overwhelming. What's important here is not to assign blame, but to understand the dynamic. Because this isn't just about one captain or one player. It's about how the system operates. It's about how expectations are communicated, and how decisions are respected. In many ways, Iga Świątek represents a new generation of athletes, one that is more aware of mental health, more willing to set boundaries, and more open about the challenges behind the scenes. But that shift doesn't happen without resistance. Fans who grew up watching athletes play through pain may struggle to accept withdrawals that aren't physically visible. Media narratives often frame these moments as controversies rather than conversations. And that creates a gap between what athletes experience and what the public understands. Let's also talk about privacy. In today's sports world, there's very little of it left. Athletes are expected to share, explain, and justify their decisions almost immediately. Silence is often interpreted as avoidance. But sometimes, silence is simply space. We don't know every detail behind Świątek's decision, and maybe we're not supposed to. Not every choice needs a full public explanation. And that's something the sports world is still learning to accept. At the same time, transparency does matter. Fans feel connected to athletes, and when something unexpected happens, they naturally want to understand why. The challenge is finding a balance, one that respects both curiosity and privacy. And that balance is fragile. Moments like this show how quickly a single statement, like, "tried to convince her," can shape the entire narrative. It shifts the focus from the decision itself to the interaction behind it. It invites speculation. It creates headlines. But beyond the headlines, there's a human story. A young athlete navigating one of the most demanding careers in the world. A teen trying to compete at the highest level. A public trying to make sense of it all. And somewhere in the middle, a decision that reflects something deeper than just participation. If we zoom out, this situation connects to a broader trend across sports. Athletes are redefining what professionalism looks like. It's no longer just about performance. It's about sustainability. How do you build a career that lasts, not just in terms of results, but in terms of well-being? For Iga Świątek, that question may be at the center of this decision. And if that's the case, it's a conversation worth having, not just for her, but for the future of the sport. Because tennis, like many global sports, is at a crossroads. The demands are increasing. The visibility is growing. The margins for error are shrinking. And yet, the human capacity to handle pressure hasn't changed at the same pace. So something has to give. Either the system adapts, or the strain continues to build. And that's why this story matters. Not because of one withdrawal. Not because of one comment. But because of what it represents. It's a reminder that behind every athlete is a person making decisions in real time, often under intense scrutiny. It's a reminder that strength isn't just about pushing through, it's also about knowing when to step back. As fans, as viewers, as part of this global sports community, we have a role to play too. The way we react, the way we discuss, the way we interpret these moments, it all contributes to the environment athletes operate in. So maybe the question isn't just why Iga Świątek withdrew. Maybe the better question is what we expect from athletes in the first place. Do we expect them to always be available? Always perform? Always explain? Or can we begin to accept that sometimes the most responsible decision is the one that protects something we can't immediately see? As this story continues to unfold, it will likely fade from headlines. Another tournament will begin. Another storyline will take its place. But the underlying issues won't disappear. They'll remain, quietly shaping the future of sports. And perhaps that's the real takeaway here. This isn't just about tennis. It's about how we understand performance, pressure, and humanity in a world that rarely slows down. Thanks for watching Trending Update USA. I'm Stefan, and I'll see you in the next video. Audience questions. Do you think athletes should prioritize national duty or personal well-being? Should players be required to explain their withdrawals publicly? Has social media made it harder for athletes to take necessary breaks?